Thank you guys all for coming out. We're going to get started. I'm going to start with a brief introduction of each panelist and then get right into the questions. If at any time any of you guys have any questions remotely or in person for any of the panelists, just raise your hand and let me know. So we will start with Judge Mae D'Agostino. Mae D'Agostino is the United States District Judge for the Northern District in New York. At the time of her appointment in 2011, she was a trial attorney with the law firm of D'Agostino, Krakeckler, McGuire, and Cardona PC. She is a 1977 magna cum laude graduate of Siena College in Loudonville, and then she attended Syracuse University College of Law. After graduating from Syracuse, she began her career as a trial attorney, and she has tried numerous civil cases, including med mal, products liability, negligence, and civil assault. Judge D'Agostino is an adjunct professor at Albany Law as well, where she teaches med mal. She is a past member of the Siena College Board of Trustees and Albany Law School Board of Trustees, and she is a member of the New York State Bar Association and the Albany County Bar Association. Marget Surowka is a co-team leader at Barclay Damon's Healthcare and Health and Human Services Providers teams. She's a former general counsel at the New York State Dental Association with over 30 years of legal experience. She has unique experience in healthcare and labor employment. Her healthcare practice includes representing agencies, facilities, and individual providers in compliance matters, licensure, disciplinary, and ethics proceedings. She routinely counsels clients facing Medicaid, Medicare, and other governmental investigations and audits, as well as assist with employment and contract matters. She has decades of experience practicing labor and employment law as well, and has conducted several internal investigations relating to sexual harassment allegations, complaints, and diversity and equity initiatives. Jessica Haller Dell'Anno is a recent graduate 2021 of Albany Law School and is an assistant counsel for the New York State Office of Cannabis Management. This is a brand new state agency, and she works in several different areas, including drafting regulations, researching new questions, and guiding the agency on issues related to the open meetings law. Prior to this role, she worked for the New York State Legislature in both Senate and Assembly. She's a proud graduate of Albany Law School, where she earned her JD and also served as president of the Health Law Society and selections editor for the Albany Law Journal of Science and Technology. She also served as a member of the Albany Medical Center Institutional Review Board since 2021. And joining us remotely is Wajiha Kazmi. She is an associate attorney at the New York Department of Health and Research, Inc. She's an Albany Law graduate of 2019 who has worked in various different areas in health law. She previously served as in-house counsel for Rutland Regional Medical Center, and prior to that, she worked with St. Peter's Health Partners in Albany. And after receiving her JD from Albany Law School, she returned to get her LLM in healthcare and compliance in 2022. Can everyone hear me okay as well? Okay. So the first question for whoever wants to take it, what advice would you give a law student interested in pursuing a career in the health law field?
I could start out off, unless Jessica wanted to. In the health law, you know, when I started practicing, I didn't start as a health law lawyer. I kind of evolved into it. And I think health law had just really started as a class here at Albany Law School. And I know that you have that. It's great if you're able to take that because you like to get a heads up on really the environment that's out there. Health law is huge. It can mean so many different things. I do a lot of the regulatory and compliance health law work. I do not defend malpractice cases, but I do a lot of defense work in disciplinary matters. The one thing I would think that someone may want to take, and I know one of our panelists has done so too, is compliance courses. I mean, one of the things, and I love it because it is part of being a counselor to my clients, is the compliance aspect. It is trying to counsel them on how to do things the appropriate way, dealing with their compliance programs and making sure that billing, fraud, waste, and abuse programs, all that are lined up. So I would recommend compliance type work. or any kind of administrative law. A lot of health law is administrative. So those are other areas.
And
Well, I
D'Agostino?
was a medical malpractice lawyer. I primarily defended doctors, hospitals, other healthcare providers, nurses, respiratory therapists, all of them. And I really fell into that as well because I knew I wanted to be a trial lawyer. And when I was getting ready to look for jobs, I was sending my resume to any number of law firms that did litigation. And I happened to land at a firm that was just about completely a litigation firm. And they did a lot of medical malpractice defense. I started out handling personal injury trials and learned a lot about the anatomy. And that was a good segue into the medical malpractice. I would recommend, although I had no such background, that you do take healthcare courses if they're available to you. That if you want to be a litigator in medical malpractice, that you take as many trial courses as you can here. You do not have to be a doctor or a nurse or a healthcare professional to be a good medical malpractice lawyer. You have to be a good student. You have to learn as much medicine as a lay person can possibly learn. And there are many ways to do that, which I can share, I think, later when some other questions are asked. But I would say, if it's something that you want to do, try to search for summer positions and clerkships with many of the law firms throughout the state of New York, and even out of the state if you don't want to live in New York, that either do plaintiff's medical malpractice or defense medical malpractice. The interesting thing about that area of the law, it is one of the few areas of law where trials are still taking place, other than criminal law. Criminal trials will always take place, but many civil cases today are settled. Medical malpractice cases are often tried to a conclusion. So if you want to be a trial lawyer and you like the medical field, so to speak, it's a great career. It's a very interesting career. You read other people's medical records for the remainder of your life. And some of the things that you read in the medical charts are absolutely unbelievable, except they're true. So I would say intern with a firm that does medical malpractice and take your healthcare law courses that are offered. And by all means, if you're interested in what I did, get into trial practice. I think regulation lawyers are absolutely, the healthcare system would fall without them. But if I had to be a healthcare regulation lawyer, I would poke hot needles in my eyes. But it's crucial, and some people love it. They absolutely do. But I was in a different area.
I actually had Judge D'Agostino for my trial advocacy class back in the day when I went to law school. So I'm just gonna note that, and she was always one of the best.
Where did I go wrong, though? You went into.
I know, I did 10 years of litigation, so.
Alrighty, and did you guys like always want to be where you are now? I know Office of Cannabis Management is new, but do you always want to be in the healthcare field?
I did not, and I did not start out that way. I kind of stumbled into it. I was a commercial litigator at a large law firm in New York City in the 90s. I did a lot of securities defense. So totally different. Life changes, law changes. I was in-house at the New York State Dental Association. I had 2 small children. That's why I went in-house. And then HIPAA came about, and much like ERISA, HIPAA provided for many lawyers really just full employment in terms of what we were going to do. And that's how I stumbled into health law.
I had no idea I would be a medical malpractice lawyer, although I tried many other types of cases. I primarily tried med mal. All I knew was I wanted to join a firm that would put me in the courtroom. They could have asked me to try anything and I would have tried it. It just so happens that the first law firm I landed with was heavy in medical malpractice. And that's how my career went in the direction that it did.
I had no idea. I'll take you even a step back. I had no idea I wanted to be a lawyer. I had a previous career. I did work in the medical field. And I worked with children and families mostly. And so I thought I would either go into health law or maybe I would do family law. I tried family law clinic, didn't love it. So I kind of started taking more health law classes, and I got this job actually because I was the health law society president at the time. And Professor Tenenbaum, she introduced me to the former general counsel of the Office of Cannabis Management. And he was like, hey, would you be interested in working here? It's a brand new agency. So I said yes, but I had no idea this is where I would be.
Wajiha, did you envision yourself where you are now?
I absolutely did. Very different from her experiences. I always knew I wanted to get into health law. I knew I didn't want to litigate though. I think it was just a personality thing, maybe. I just was like, I'll do anything health law related, just not litigation. Going through law school and doing a lot of different sorts of internships, whether it was at hospitals or Department of Health, or just like the health law clinic, I was able to kind of better understand that these are the types of things I want to do. So then I started interning at Department of Health. I did it for 1.5 years and I absolutely loved it. I got to know the culture there, the types of work that people do. I worked at a different bureau at that time than I do currently, but I think just building off of all those experiences and then working as in-house counsel, I kind of came back on this route and joined Department of Health.
So what do you all see as a major issue in the healthcare field today? Or the cannabis field, or how it relates to health?
Cannabis is a pretty big topic these days. I think we're up to 21 states that have legalized recreational use. So, I mean, it's all over the news in the elections. 2 more states just voted to pass recreational use marijuana. So it's big hot topic right now. Big hot topic.
I would say, especially following COVID, just the developments in telehealth, and what we're seeing in the growth of that, much of it obviously because of COVID, it was necessary. I was just at a conference where it was behavioral health providers, and obviously that area is so needed. I advise a lot on compliance and Medicaid, Medicare compliance work for those kind of providers. That area is growing. I mean, the thing about health law is it grows. I mean, things change, the law changes. And so there's so many different areas, privacy, obviously with HIPAA. But I do believe that, just some of the enforcement of those regulations is certainly interesting, all because of different things in the, that we're seeing, the growth of social media. Now it's just exploding, it's not the growth, and how that influences privacy, et cetera.
I think that as I was leaving trial practice and getting ready to take the federal bench, we were still grappling as trial attorneys with the electronic medical record, a blessing and a curse, depending on which side you are on. A blessing in that in a push of a button, your physician can get a consultation with any number of other physicians about an angiogram, an X-ray, anything like that. And that is a gift. And also for medical malpractice attorneys, a bit of a curse, because even to this day, some individuals, particularly in a hospital setting, do not fully understand what has to be filled out in an electronic chart in drop-down menus. And in medicine, we have a phrase, in medical malpractice anyway, we have a phrase that if it's not written, it did not happen. And as I was going to the bench, I had cases where, well, it happened to my own mother, where in an emergency department, a doctor asked me, well, when did she have that? When did that popliteal graft get infected? And if anybody knew my mother's history, health history, I did. And I said, my mother never had a popliteal graft. I don't know what you're talking about. It got cut and pasted into my mother's medical record that she had a popliteal graft. There are numerous instances where emergency room nurses or others will fail to fill in someone's temperature. That might not seem like a big deal if you're in the emergency room for a sprained ankle, but if you have a bone infection called osteomyelitis 7 months later, it could be a really big deal that the person's temperature is not recorded because that could have been a brewing infection. So in medicine, the electronic medical record is something for medical malpractice lawyers that can be a problem. It does have its benefits and its disadvantages.
One of the recent issues that I've noticed at work is healthcare shortage and staff. It started with COVID. I'm sure it existed prior to COVID too, but it just peaked and it's not getting any better. So one of the issues that we're currently working with is getting different healthcare professionals to work on top of their licenses. So we've had multiple executive orders that have come into place. They come and go. They have to be renewed every 30 days. And so, for example, if a pharmacist can vaccinate against COVID but not for monkeypox, so then we have to like figure out how to get them that authority. Same thing with polio. So it's just a consistent problem that we're seeing, that we're trying to figure out how to get different healthcare professionals who weren't exactly vaccinating for all these different communicable diseases, how they can do so under sensitive timeframes.
And are there any particular skills that employers in your areas are looking for when they're hiring students out of law school?
You know, good writing is always, I mean, that's a given. Good research and writing. In what I do with health law, it's also very important to be a good communicator, a verbal communicator with my clients, and be able to be succinct with them and direct with them, and oftentimes have to explain to them something that they don't want to do that they have to do, or whatever it is. So that's what I would say.
I would agree. It is a bit of a buzzkill these days when the first question out of a potential employee is, can I work at home? Let me say this. I'm very sensitive to COVID precautions. We kept the courts open at all times. We never closed during COVID. However, I sent my entire staff out of the building for a year. Safety was and is paramount. It still is paramount. But doctors and hospitals and nurses expect people to be present to represent them. Try prepping a nervous doctor for his first deposition ever over a remote proceeding. It's not going to go well. I would say that the most important thing, because I ran my own law firm, even taking COVID out of the equation, is someone who understands that in litigation and in medical malpractice, it is not a 9-to-5 job. I had doctors calling me 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m. when I was on trial. After my son was born, I would have to say, doctor, I'm sorry, I need to feed my son. I need to get him to bed. I need to read to him. If you insist on meetings, and if you want to complain to the insurance company about this, you can complain, but you have to come to my house at 8:30. I'm a single parent. I can't leave the house. So what I was looking for when I was hiring associates at my own law firm was people who understood that it was not a 9-to-5 job, that doctors and nurses and other healthcare professionals, they don't understand litigation the way we do. I once said to a young doctor, you're going to be deposed next week. And he went, "What-ed? I'm going to be what-ed?" I mean, he was a nervous wreck. I never used the word deposed again. I said, I would say your deposition is going to take place. So in terms of, if I was still at my law firm today and one of you wanted a job, I'd be asking you, how are you being at the office, after 5 o'clock? Do you understand that it's all hands on deck in a litigation firm? Do you understand that? Do you understand that sometimes you might be hole punching something for me at the very last minute? And we like to hear yes to all of that. I understand that and I'm willing to do it. And even when I hire law clerks, it's the same story. Be present. Of course, we continue to take COVID precautions. One of my clerks has a cold. I said, I just say, stay home, keep testing, don't come in. I'm not stupid, but I'm just saying that in my field, and I won't speak for anyone else, litigation, what I did, you have to be present, you have to be willing to work long hours, and you have to be willing to take constructive criticism, because to do a proper deposition and to be a good trial lawyer, you need a lot of constructive criticism, not mean-spirited criticism. I don't believe in that. Just really good, positive feedback about what you're doing right and what you're not doing right.
I do want to add, because when you are representing individual healthcare providers, you have to be extremely flexible with your time. Oftentimes it's early in the morning, late at night, when they're not seeing patients or whatever. And so that does go depending on what kind of help all you have. And it is important to note that.
I would say for my agency, we're brand new. They're looking for, I think everywhere you go, they're going to be looking for good researching skills, good writing skills. But I think also for us, we want fresh eyes. We have all kinds of people. I'm the newest person there by far, but we have people that have 20 years of experience, 30 years of experience, and then me, a year of experience. So definitely, some energy around it. Passionate about what we're doing, and just the typical things that any employer is going to be looking for.
I agree with everything that was said. Communication skills, research skills, writing skills. In the area that I work with, or the program that I work with a lot of healthcare professionals. They don't understand legal terms. So to be able to articulate your thoughts and analyze laws and regulations for them in a way that they would understand in a non-combative way. Physicians, in my experience, whether working as in-house counsel or now a Department of Health, are very opinionated. So you just have to make sure that you are, letting you work with them as a team member and do it in a way so they don't feel like they're being attacked or they're being told how to do their job. I think that's very important.
This might speak actually more to med mal, but there's a lot of the medical terms that in the physician's documents. How do you go about learning all of that? Is there a way you prepped before you started?
Well, there's a lot. That's a great question. There is a lot of studying that has to be done to be a medical malpractice lawyer. The great benefit of being a defense lawyer, as I was, is that the physicians have a vested interest in training you. So in addition to being brought over to Albany Med from time to time to study cadavers, which was a great privilege, I would often ask the physicians what the best books would be for me to learn as much medicine as I could. And there are just basics that you have to know, and they're not difficult. You have to get a book on laboratory values and understand what certain laboratory values mean. You have to get a good book on the anatomy so that you can understand, not as a physician would. I would never pretend to be a physician, not even near it, but just get a good book on anatomy and study the anatomy. There's a great book that I used when I was a young lawyer called the Merck, MERCK manual. The Merck manual for me was like the Cliff Notes of medicine, the Barbara I outlined, so to speak. It's organized by medical fields. You know, there's one chapter on obstetrics, one chapter on gynecology, one chapter on nephrology, one chapter on neurology, et cetera, et cetera. And it's written in a way that, you know, a lay person could understand quite well. Because I will say this, you do have to have a very good working knowledge of medicine to be a medical malpractice lawyer. You have to know it well enough, if you're a plaintiff's lawyer, that you can confront that physician on the witness stand. Because if you don't know medicine, you are like raw meat to that physician. You are a sport. You are going to be taken down. At the same time, you have to have the confidence and the knowledge that you can put it in terms that everyday jurors can understand. Remember, I did a lot of obstetrical malpractice, brain damaged infant cases. And there's a lot that jurors don't understand about the birthing process. And so it would be my job to teach them a little bit about reading fetal heart monitor strips. And it would be my job to teach them what, for example, cephalopelvic disproportion is, when a doctor can't get the baby's shoulders out and that sort of thing. So you need to know it well enough to converse with the doctor, but then well enough to put it in a language that the jury understands. So you can get nursing manuals, you can get the Merck manual. The nursing manuals are great in terms of educating you on lab values, which will become a part of your life. You know, what's a normal hemoglobin, what's a normal hematocrit, that sort of thing. And the law firm you go to, well, if you go to a med mal firm, they'll help you get those books and those studies. Good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I was at the Dental Association, and so I had to become immersed in not only the procedures, the uniform procedures that you might be talking about, but also what some of the cutting edge issues were in dentistry and how they were changing. And I still do a lot of dentistry. I do some defense work for licensure. A lot of time with the licensure, it's not, you don't have to get quite as in depth. Sometimes you do, but not usually as much as you would in medical malpractice work, but you still have to learn it. And you also have to go over it with whether it be the physician, the dentist, the nurse, whoever it is, and be able to speak their language. But at the same time, I never think I know more. I listen to the client and really say, can you explain this to me? Can you understand? So you know exactly where, in my case, the regulators might be asking certain questions. A lot of the professional discipline might involve controlled substance prescriptions. And a lot of it tends to involve documentation issues. Or the failure to properly and adequately document the record.
Well, at the talk of the legalese, I was like, there's a whole different language too for physicians that you'd have to understand.
Yeah, those nursing manuals have all of the abbreviations that are used.
That's-
So like NPO, nothing, nothing by mouth, and they have all of the abbreviations.
That's cool. That's nice. So what are the biggest challenges that you faced in your career so far, and how have you overcome them? Whether they're specifically related to health issues or just like growing as an attorney.
I have two kids. They're now grown. But I divorced when they were young teenagers, and I think being a committed, dedicated lawyer and also being a committed, dedicated mother is challenging. It's not something that I regret for a minute, and I love the challenges of it all the time. But I'm not going to discount the fact that those were challenges. And you heard Judge D'Agostino talk about it, even just time-wise and when you do things. To me, that still is a challenge on occasion, when things happen. And I think that is something as a lawyer, all of you will experience the challenge of trying to balance your family life and the real challenge of being the best lawyer you can be, because that takes commitment and a lot of time.
I could probably fill half a semester with what it was like in the early days for me, but I'll just put it in a nutshell and say that it was very difficult in 1981 because many judges did not believe women should be trial lawyers. Not only was I fighting with a plaintiff's attorney, I was also fighting with judges. And I had many of my clients were men, male physicians. That's changed now in Capital District, but I had many wives call me and say, and I quote, "No young girl is representing my husband," and then hang up on me. So it was very, very difficult in the early 80s. Many attorneys and lawyers did not feel that we should be in the profession. It was demoralizing. There were days, and it's funny, I just said this, I spoke at a memorial for former presiding justice of the appellate division, Leonard Weiss, that a judge called me an ignorant girl during a conference, a preliminary conference in a medical malpractice case, which is just about setting deadlines for when things are going to be done. He told me to produce my doctor tomorrow for a deposition, and that's what not a preliminary conference is for. And the plaintiff's attorney, Dan Santola, one of the best med mal lawyers in this area, looked at the judge and said, no, Judge, we don't want Ms. D'Agostino to produce her doctor tomorrow. I'm not ready for that. I'm not ready. And I said, Your Honor, I can't produce them. They live in California now. And he threw a book at me and called me an ignorant girl. And, I think that day I was, as much as I wanted to do this, I walked out of that office that day thinking, this is too much. You come out of a law school where you're respected, whether you're a man or a woman. And, I just remember walking out and I ran into Judge Leonard Weiss, who barely knew me, and said that he had heard my name and heard that I was doing good things. And he said, I expect great things from you, Ms. D'Agostino. If I had not run into Judge Weiss that afternoon, I'm not so sure where that's how despondent I was from dealing with that Supreme Court judge. And that was not at all that common. So I know that some of the younger panelists did not have the breadth of problems that I had, but I would say to you, it was brutal. And that's all I'll say. If I had more time, I could give you a million examples.
Not to put you on the spot.
I mean, I'm just starting out. So I think for me right now, my biggest challenge is just figuring out what I'm doing as an attorney. I mean, I know what I'm doing mostly, but just figuring it out right now, it's a challenge.
You'll get it.
Yep.
Takes time.
That's why they call it practice.
Right. Yeah.
Every day.
And you can be practicing for 30 years. The year before I went on the bench, I was still learning things in the courtroom. It's like the game of baseball. Funky things can happen in baseball on a given night. Honestly, after 30 years, every time I tried a case, there was something new and different, a new challenge. So that's the beauty of the profession. And the more you do it, the more fun you're going to have. I promise you.
I completely agree with that. And every day is different. Every client is different. Even though the facts look the same, there's always something unique about it. And and it is exciting, it's fun, it's challenging, and that's why we love it.
Wajiha, do you have anything to add?
Sure. For me, I think one of the biggest challenges was when I completed the JD program, I was doing different internships, and sometimes I was doing 2 internships and attending school full time. I didn't realize how difficult it would be to work full time and complete the LLM program. So I think that was a bigger challenge than I was anticipating initially. Obviously, everything worked out at the end, but that year and a half that I was working full time and taking all these classes to do the LLM program, it definitely took a toll on my mental health a little bit, but we got through it. So
That's good. Have you had any experiences, Jess? I know this is, have you had any, because you're newer? Have you had any experiences that have really helped you, or any skills that you've developed early in your career that really helped you throughout your whole career?
I think it's important to ask questions when you're a young lawyer at your your first job. It's not a sign of weakness as a young lawyer to ask questions. I think it's a sign of strength. I think the thing that defined me when I first got out of law school is that I was the only and the first woman at my law firm. And I lived in persistent fear that I would do something that would prevent the law firm from hiring another woman. So I worked, I think I prepared more than you could, almost more than you could possibly imagine for anything that I did. But that extra level of preparation that I did, because I was the only woman at the firm and wanted to take care to make sure that they would hire other women, served me well throughout my career. Because I developed, you know how in law school you have to figure out how to study to be successful. I figured out in the first 2 years a methodology for how to prepare for litigation. And I prepared the same way for 30 years. So I think that when you're young, the best thing to do is to ask the senior partner questions, to ask your organization questions, develop your own mechanism for preparedness. And the final thing that I'll say is, I can tell whether a lawyer who's in front of me is prepared in about 30 seconds. You know, because you can't handle a deposition, or you can't even handle a pretrial conference unless you know the file forwards and backwards. And I once had a young lawyer at a deposition ask me when I was practicing, "Hey, Mae, will you ask the questions first?" And I said, "Well, why don't you ask the questions first? Because I'm here to protect you. What you don't ask, I will ask." And he said to me, "Well, I only got the file yesterday." And I said, "You've got to be kidding. You got it yesterday and you're not ready to go?" You know, that's the difference between me and him. If I got a file at 8 p.m. and I had to do a deposition the next day, I would be up all night getting ready for the deposition. So in anything that you do in the law, usually the most prepared person wins. So keep that in mind.
You know, I'd agree with that. And not only being prepared, read everything, really know. You've got to research, you've got to read it all, you've got to know what you're doing. I learned I think at a very young point in my career also, how to listen. As an attorney, you've really got to communicate with your clients and be able to draw certain things out of your clients. I remember my mentor, who's a great litigator in New York City, commercial litigator. When he had me do my first deposition, he left after 5 minutes. And I talked to him after the deposition. He said, "How did it go?" I said, "It went great. Why did you leave?" He said, "Because you did not need me there. You were fully prepared. You knew what to do. And he said, I like how you've developed your own style. He said, you took from me what you needed. You prepare and you developed how you interact. As an attorney, we have to be able to interview not only our own clients, but perhaps the regulators or whoever else. And that's very important, not only learning how to communicate, but how to listen and how to figure things out as well.
Thank you.
I mean, I've taken things from my previous career and I use it all the time. I mean, I think collaboration is really important. I mean, right now I do ask a lot of questions and, my supervisor always encourages me if I have a question, just, I go in our office and we talk about it. And usually that saves me like hours of research instead of, I sit at my computer and I'm searching. I think collaboration is really, really important, especially when you're a young attorney. Also being prepared, really important. Even just, not even just for court, but for meetings, like I'm in meetings every day and there's constant questions and, you just have to really know where I'm at. I have to really know the law. I have to know our regulations back and forth, to be prepared every day.
I think it's important to build relationships with the people that you work with. Just throughout all the internships that I've held and the few other places that I've worked prior to the position that I currently have, I realized the importance of building a connection with your supervisor, especially. Like everybody else mentioned, asking questions is important, but it's difficult to ask questions if you're intimidated or if you don't necessarily trust who's supervising you. So if you build a relationship with your supervisor, they're not only watching what you're doing and helping you build with that, but they also become a mentor. And I realized that most of the internships that I held during law school, all the people that supervised me ended up being mentors, and some even became friends, to the point that I'm still in touch with them, and it's very helpful. I'm not as newly graduated, but I did graduate 3 years ago, which I guess in the bigger scheme of things, it's not that long. So just having those really sincere core relationships kind of helps me to, just keep going, knowing that I have support so I can reach out not only to my current supervisor, but if I'm running into issues, not necessarily work related, but I just need advice, I can call multiple people and like talk through, and they have years and years of experience. So I trust that they would guide me the right way, but it starts with just building relationships.
Can I add to that?
course, yeah.
Great point. And it's having those relationships, not only with the people who you work with, but also the people who you have to deal with, whether it be at the state. I deal with a lot of regulators. It's very important that they trust me. They trust what I say. They trust that I'm giving them the information that I should be. That helps. Having a good reputation with your adversaries is really important too. And, the law is small, and the health law is small, and you may run into these people again someday. So I absolutely agree with that. Building those relationships, even if they might be adversarial to you, I think is really important.
I do have a few more questions on the list, but does anybody have any questions for any of the panelists? Yes, and I'll repeat it after you say it too.
Okay, yeah, I have a question in terms of compliance. Like, how do you keep up to date with like new laws and everything that's happening? Like, do you have any resources that you go to? Like every morning, like there's a specific thing that you check.
So, sorry,
Yeah.
just so the people online can hear. In terms of compliance, is there any, now I forgot the question.
Any resources.
Any resources that to look at to help keep up with the compliance regulations?
Yeah, we have a librarian at the firm who keeps track. We have listservs. One of the things about health law is you do have to constantly keep track. All law you do. I mean, laws change, so you always do, but especially compliance. So it will depend also on what kind of clients you represent. For example, we do a lot with clients who are agencies helping the developmentally disabled. So you look at the Office of Persons with Developmental Disabilities in New York State, and you get on those listservs and you check those things out. There's a lot of associations that are out there that are constantly putting out alerts and other things, but you have to stay on top of it. I guess it depends on if you're a large firm or not. And if you have those resources, but even the Bar Association's health law section has different committees and different listservs that you're able to, you can stay, up to date on things. But that is one of the things in particular with health law, I find, especially during COVID, it was just one thing after another every day.
Any other questions? All right, so as there's 3 Ls in the audience too, who might be really interested in a career in health law, but might not have had the opportunity to take any health law related courses, what opportunities outside of the law school should these students pursue in order to demonstrate their interest or in order to prepare for a career in health law? I know you've talked about trial and trial practice classes as well.
Yeah, that's any healthcare classes. Seeking, as I said earlier, seeking out a list of law firms in your area of where you want to practice that do medical malpractice. I think joining a local bar association is very helpful. Most bar associations have student membership, and there is a lot of collegiality, particularly in this area. Our bar associations, we have wonderful friendships, and even if we're on opposite sides of the case, we still enjoy each other's company. And you can actually meet lawyers there who do health related fields. Like if you were at a happy hour with Albany County Bar Association, perhaps you heard my name, that I was a medical malpractice lawyer. I've had young lawyers ask another person, is that Mae D'Agostino, and come over to me and ask me questions about, health law. So I think that there's a great benefit. And I always wonder why more law students don't join the Albany County Bar or the federal court bar, because it's a great way to meet lawyers. I met, I had a law clerk years ago. I inadvertently met him at Cornell at a function. Somebody sat me next to him. We began talking. One thing led to another. So the more lawyers you meet along the way, these 3 years that you're here in Albany, I think the better for you.
Definitely agree with that. And I think, like, when you think of health law, you think of a health law class, but there are other classes that you can take that actually are really, really helpful for health law. Like business organizations, I use that every day. Administrative law, I highly recommend taking. I use that every day. So there are other classes that you can point to, and it can still be related to health law. Also, the bar associations are really helpful for students. I think they're usually free. If I remember correctly, I think it's free if you're a student. I think I'm part of the American Health Law Association, and you can sign up for emails, and they'll send you emails on topic areas you're interested in. There's podcasts out there you can listen to. I think the American Health Law Association has a podcast. So there are other resources out there that you can look at.
We have a number of our health law associates who had careers, social worker, they were social workers, a nurse. So, we've also seen people who have come from health law into the legal arena as well. It doesn't always happen. It doesn't have to happen, but we've seen that as well. And it doesn't have to be medicine. We have several who are social workers who understand that field too. Again, we do a lot with behavioral health issues.
Wajiha, did you want to talk about the LLM and compliance?
Sure. So I actually did a health law concentration. I was completing the JD program. So I already understood that when I was taking those classes, I enjoyed each and every one of them. So then to build on that knowledge, I came back to school. I went back to Albany Law to complete the LLM program in health law and healthcare compliance. I've taken classes like EMTALA, public health policy, healthcare compliance. I've had a class with Judge D'Agostino back when I was completing my JD for her med-mal. Awesome class, recommended for everybody. So just even if you're, if you're a 3L and you're really passionate about health law and healthcare compliance, you can still go back to school. You can complete an LLM program. If you don't want to continue school for that long, I know there's like other things you can do. There's a health law certification program. And I think there's 1 or 2 other programs related to health law that you can also complete, which won't take as much time as it does for an LLM. And just echoing what Jess said about joining different associations, whether it's NISPA or AHLA, which is the American Health Law Association. AHLA allows you to volunteer to author, to write articles for them. And so if you want to get your name out there, have some publications, I think that's a great way to show your interest in health law, but also to show that you're competent in writing.
Professor Tenenbaum, not to speak for her, but would likely help you write anything related to health law.
That's true.
Yeah, she's fantastic. And then that's a timely discussion too, because classes registration is tomorrow and Friday. And yeah, to do the final question, are there any internship opportunities that your employer provides or that you know of that students might be interested in?
So Department of Health does. There isn't any official way of doing so. So if somebody is interested, either you or Kelsey could get their resumes and maybe send it to me, and then I can forward it to the general counsel. And if there's opportunities available, I think they always welcome interns.
Yeah, we will send out contact information for anyone who wants it.
And depending, our firm has summer associate positions, and sometimes they have positions that are specifically for the health law group that we have. It gives people a flavor. Again, even different firms have different emphasis on what they do in terms of health law, and it gives you a flavor of what we do and what you can do.
The firms around here that do medical malpractice generally do hire summer clerks. I can't give you an exhaustive list, but they include my first law firm, Maynard O'Connor. Second law firm that I was at that's now called McGuire Cardona. The law firm of Phelan and Phelan. The law firm of, one of the principal partners is Mackenzie Monaco. Certainly the Jones Hacker firm do a lot of medical malpractice. And they all do hire summer clerks. And if I've forgotten any, and I'm sure I have, you can always ask me or any other attorney in town who the medical malpractice firms are here. I am aware that not all of you will settle in Albany, and as you can imagine, there are many medical malpractice firms in the city and elsewhere. It's a very specialized area of the law.
We just filed our paperwork for a field placement program, so we can take students next semester. So if you're interested, next semester.
Any final questions? All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us, especially our panelists. We are having food downstairs in the East Foyer. So thank you all for coming.